Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn about CIF trade terms. We mainly learn about rights and obligations of both buyers and sellers, the variations of CIF terms, as well as the aspects of delivery nature, such as cost and risk. Cost, insurance, and freight is a term used in both sea and inland transportation. When CIF is used, we need to add name of the destination port after CIF. For example, for exports from our country, the correct term is A. FOB Shanghai, B. CFR Shanghai, C. CIF Bangkok. We should choose A. FOB plus loading port, C. CIF plus destination port. In CIF terms, what are the rights and obligations of both buyers and sellers? We mainly study the risks, responsibility, and expenses allocation of the parties. The risk, responsibility, and cost allocation between the buyer and seller in CIF sale can be summarized as follows. Risks. Seller. All risks before loading. Buyer. All risks after loading. Responsibility. Seller. Chartering a ship, booking space, purchasing insurance, completing export customs clearance procedures, delivering the goods, and submitting documents. Buyer. Appointing the time and place of unloading at the port of destination, completing import customs clearance procedures, receiving orders, take delivery, and make payments. Expenses. Seller. Cost, insurance, and freight. Export customs clearance fees. Insurance and ocean freight are included. Buyer. Cost, insurance, and freight. Import customs duties and clearance fees. After learning about the rights and obligations of both buyer and seller, let's do this exercise. The obligations of buyer include A. Bearing all expenses after loading. Correct. B. Bearing all risks after loading. Correct. C. Being responsible for chartering a ship and booking space. Incorrect. D. Being responsible for arranging cargo insurance. Incorrect. When using CIF terms to determine the party responsible for unloading expenses, there are different variations of CIF terms. Let's take a look at the main variations of CIF. CIF liner terms refers to the unloading expenses, which are handled according to the liner terms. This means that the buyer does not bear the expense of unloading, which should be undertaken by the seller or the shipping company. CIF landed refers to the seller's responsibility for all related expenses of unloading the goods onto the dock, including lighterage and wharfage fees. CIF ex tackle CIF. CIF ex tackle refers to the seller's responsibility for the expenses hosting the goods from the ship's hold to the ship's tackle, which also includes expenses of unloading onto the wharf or lighterage ship. CIFX ship's hold refers to the buyer's responsibility for all expenses of unloading goods from the ship's hold to the dock, starting from the ship's tackle, once the goods have arrived at the destination port. After learning about the rights and obligations of both the buyer and the seller in a CIF sale, the violations of CIF terms, let's look at the nature of the delivery in CIF sale. The seller delivers the goods against bill of lading, and the buyer makes a payment against shipping documents. As long as the seller submits to the buyer the full set of qualified documents stipulated in the contract on time, even if the goods are damaged or lost during shipment, the buyer must make the payment. If the documents submitted by the seller do not meet the requirements, even if the goods are shipped to the destination intactly, the buyer has a right to refuse to make payment. After learning the key points, let's do some in-class practices. The Company A from China and the Company B from Thailand entered into a sale contract for a 5,000 kg of wool on April 20th in a certain year, at a unit price of $314 per kilogram, CIF Bangkok. On July 9th, the Company A faxed Company B, stating that the goods had been loaded and expected to arrive in London on July 31st. However, at the end of July, when Company B went to complete the delivery procedures, they found that the contracted goods were not on the ship at all. After an extensive search, it was found that the ship name provided by the seller was incorrect, and the goods under the contract had arrived at port on July 20 by another ship. However, by this time, it had caused Company B's delayed customs declaration and delayed pickup, resulting in a late fee of 13,000 yuan imposed by the customs. Is it reasonable for Company B to file a claim against Company A? If the goods fall off the hook during loading, who should bear the responsibility? If the seller provides correct ship name, the damages are still caused on the goods during shipment. Can the seller submit the necessary documents to settle the payment for the goods? Let's make an analysis. The claim of buyer is reasonable, because in a CIF sale, it is the seller's responsibility to charter a ship and book space. The seller is obliged to inform the buyer promptly about the loading of the goods. For the situation where the goods fall off the hook, it depends on which Incoterms is applied. Since 2010, the risk is transferred when the goods are loaded onto the ship. In this case, because the goods have not been loaded yet, the risk has not been transferred. Therefore, it is seller that shall bear the responsibility. However, in the Incoterm 2000, the main point is the ship's role. Therefore, it is necessary to determine where the goods fell off on the ship in order to assign responsibility. As a foreign trade salesperson, it is important to pay attention to applying the appropriate Incoterms when signing a contract. The seller can get paid for the goods, because a CIF sale is a symbolic delivery, and the risk is transferred on the ship at the port of shipment. As long as the seller submits the required documents, the payment can be settled. The buyer cannot refuse to make payment. Through this case, how much have you learned about the concept of CIF? In the end, we prepare a post-class exploration exercise. Please think about it carefully after the class. Thank you for listening.